It's hard to imagine, but in the summer of 1914, Europe was really at the absolute peak of its power. These were nations with vast global empires. And yet, in just a few weeks, it all came crashing down. They plunged themselves into a war that honestly nobody really wanted, and nobody could control. So let's dig into how the Great War became the 20th century's first and maybe biggest catastrophe. This quote, wow, it just hits you, right? It perfectly captures the tragedy of it all. Every single country thought this was going to be a walk in the park, a quick, glorious little war, and then home for Christmas. But the reality? Well, as we're about to see, it was a brutal 4-year slaughter that completely changed the face of warfare and really the world itself. And the cost, it's just staggering. 20 million people. Just let that sink in for a second. 20 million, that's soldiers and civilians. That number alone, it just sets the stage for the sheer scale of the disaster we're about to get into. It's almost unbelievable. So the big question is, how on earth did this happen? Well, the stage was set long, long before 1914. You have to picture early 20th century Europe as this continent just simmering with tension. It was, quite literally, a powder keg just waiting for a spark. Okay, so let's break down the ingredients that made this whole thing possible. First, you've got this intense imperial rivalry, all the great powers scrambling for colonies around the globe. Then there's a massive naval arms race, especially between Britain and Germany. Add to that the growing instability in the Balkans as the old Ottoman Empire started to crumble. But honestly, the most dangerous ingredient of all was this tangled, complex web of alliances. These treaties basically meant that a small regional fight could instantly become a massive continent-wide war. An attack on one country meant others had to jump in. There was just no wiggle room for diplomacy. So what you end up with is Europe basically split into two huge armed camps. You've got the Triple Entente, that's France, Britain, and Russia, and on the other side, the Triple Alliance, with Germany and Austria-Hungary as the main players. It was the ultimate geopolitical tripwire. One wrong move and the whole thing goes up. And yup, that tripwire was finally tripped. It all came down to a single event in the summer of 1914. One assassination set off a chain reaction so fast and so powerful that diplomats were just completely helpless to stop it. Look at this timeline. The speed is just wild. In a little over a month, we go from a political murder in Sarajevo to a full-blown continental war. It's insane. Austria-Hungary blames Serbia. Russia, Serbia's protector, starts mobilizing its army. Germany, allied with Austria, then declares war on Russia and on Russia's ally France. And then, the final piece, Germany invades neutral Belgium to get to France, and that's what brings Britain into the war. Boom, boom, boom. The dominoes just fell, one right after the other. And, in those last few frantic days, there were these desperate personal pleas to stop the madness. The German Kaiser and the Russian Tsar, they were actually cousins. They called each other Willie and Nicky. They were sending these urgent telegrams back and forth. But it was just too late. Their words couldn't stop what was already in motion. So could it have worked? Could these personal ties between two cousins actually stop this giant war machine? The answer was a hard no. And that's the crucial thing to understand here. These incredibly detailed mobilization plans, all based on generals and super precise railway timetables, they had taken on a life of their own. The politicians, the kings, the emperors, they were losing control to the very war machines they had built. So, the war is on, and every single side has this brilliant plan for a quick, easy victory. But the reality of industrial-age warfare, well, it was about to shatter all those expectations and create a kind of hell that nobody had ever seen before. Home by Christmas. You hear this phrase a lot, and it just perfectly captures how wrong everyone was. All across Europe, you had young men marching off to war, totally convinced it would be this short, glorious adventure. A chance to be a hero before coming home and settling down. They had no idea. They just couldn't have been more wrong. So, for Germany, the whole strategy was built on this one thing, the Schlieffen Plan. Here's the deal with that. It was all about speed. The idea was to hit France fast, knock them out in a few weeks, before that huge Russian army could get its act together in the east. The fact that this plan failed, well, that's what led directly to the nightmare of the Western Front. Right, so when that initial lightning-fast German attack stalled, what happened? Both sides just dug in. And what came next was 4 years of trench warfare. We're talking about a static, miserable, and unbelievably deadly kind of fighting from these massive networks of ditches. It became the defining experience of the war for millions. And why was this stalemate so unbreakable? Well, it's because all the amazing technology of the Industrial Revolution was now being used for one thing: killing. You've got machine guns, you've got modern artillery, all of it gave a massive, massive advantage to the guys on defense. Trying to charge across that open ground, that no man's land, it was basically a suicide mission. This quote from a soldier who was actually there, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? The tactics were from a different century, but the weapons were brand new. You had generals miles behind the lines, ordering these incredibly brave men to charge right into a wall of machine gun fire. The results were completely predictable and absolutely devastating. Okay, so by 1918, the guns finally fall silent. The fighting is over. But the impact of this war? It was really just beginning. This conflict left deep, permanent scars on the entire world, not just redrawing maps, but setting the stage for even more conflict down the road. I mean, look at the political fallout. It's absolutely massive. The war didn't just weaken empires, it caused the complete and utter collapse of 4 of them. These were powerful, centuries-old dynasties: the German, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, and the Ottoman empires. All of them just gone, vanished from the map. And that unleashed a wave of political change and instability that we're still feeling today. The human cost for the soldiers alone was it's catastrophic. Over 8.5 million soldiers were killed. Think about that. It's a number that's so big, it's almost impossible to really truly wrap your head around it. And then you look at the civilians. The toll on them was even higher. We're talking about 13 million people who died from starvation, from disease, from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This really was a total war. It affected absolutely everyone. And you'd think after all that, they'd get the peace right. But the peace that followed was deeply, deeply flawed. The Treaty of Versailles is the big one here. It imposed these incredibly harsh terms on Germany and included this infamous war guilt clause, basically blaming them for the whole thing. All that did was create this powerful feeling of national humiliation that just festered for years. And yeah, it planted the seeds for the next war. Which brings us to the final, chilling question. They called it the war to end all wars. But did it? Or, in trying to solve one massive conflict, did it actually just create all the problems that would lead directly to an even more destructive war just 20 years later? It's a pretty sobering legacy for a war that started almost by accident.